What is going on, guys? Predator458 here, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to be staging the grudge match of the decade, McLaren versus Ferrari. Since Top Gear couldn't pull it off, we're going to pull it off right here in the virtual world thanks to Assetto Corsa. So yeah, in case there wasn't enough of a giveaway, we're going to be taking out the McLaren P1 and the LaFerrari, and we're going to take them out at Spa-Francorchamps and see how each of these cars can do. I'll probably do an outlap in them to heat up the tires, possibly one or two hot laps depending on how they go, and we'll see which car is fastest. But not only that, how each of them drives in game. So with that being said, let's hit the big red start button and I'll see you guys on the track. Right, guys, and welcome to Belgium and Spa-Francorchamps, and a very warm welcome to the McLaren P1. As this is the newcomer, I thought it was only fair that we would allow the McLaren to take the first stab at the track, and then we'll see how the LaFerrari compares to it afterwards. So a quick word on the setup we're going to be using for the car. We're going to leave everything as it is. You can't change a whole lot on this car, but we're going to run the Hypercar Trofeo tires, which is like a race tire, I guess. You do have the option for hypercar road tires, but we'll leave it on the Trofeos, and we're going to run 30 liters of fuel, and this will be the same for both cars. So let's get started. Now, as for the sort of difficulty level, I guess you could say, I'm running this without assists. There is no ABS, no traction control, and no stability control. You can of course turn those on if you wish, but I kind of like to leave them all off. Makes things more exciting. So, a little bit of oversteer there, which is nice. I'm not quite sure why Shadowplay decided to not record all the audio from my first attempt at this. But anyway, it is what it is, so we've got to try and do it again. Now, the McLaren P1 does allow you to manually control the DRS system, since this is not going to be our timed lap. I'll push the button, and as you can see next to, in the instrument cluster next to what gear we're in, there's a blue bar that says DRS, and when we push the button it decreases the angle of the rear wing to its minimum sort of levels. We are not going to use this on the hot lap though, simply because the LaFerrari does not allow you to do the same, and we want these sort of as level playing fields as possible for these two cars. Now the car does automatically adjust the rear wing, so when we go down the long straights again, you might notice the blue bar decrease a little bit as you go faster. So the car will still benefit from its system automatically, as will the LaFerrari, but we're not going to manually control it. So, what do I think of the McLaren P1? Now, this was one of the first cars I tried when the Dream Pack DLC went live, and it's actually quite a good fun car to drive. We had a bit of a lockup there, so you can see we're definitely running without ABS assistance. Got on a power a little bit earlier and ran wide, but it's not the end of the world. So yeah, it's quite a good fun car to drive. Now, I actually don't normally like, I haven't had the best of relationships with the McLarens that we have in game. I would go so far as to say as I hate driving the 12C, and although I am faster in it than I am in the 458 Italia, I will drive the 458 all day, every day, instead of that bloody McLaren. I find it horrible. But this is a completely different beast. And there we are, our outlap was a 218.9. So let's see if we can do a little bit better now that the tires have got a little bit more temperature in them. But with regards to this car versus the LaFerrari, I actually think I might prefer the McLaren. Now, this is a little bit strange to me, because I am a massive Ferrari fan. I've often joked around and said that my blood is red because I'm a Ferrari supporter. But when it comes to driving this car, we could have maybe braked a little bit later this time, but we are 3/10 up. When it comes to comparing this car to the LaFerrari, I actually think I prefer this car. Now there are areas of the LaFerrari that I prefer, which we will get to when we pull that car out. But as an overall car, I think I prefer the McLaren, which is quite interesting. And we maybe should have braked a little bit more there, kind of had a bit of understeer and ran a little bit wide. But I think we will probably do another lap after this. I'm sure you guys don't mind watching 2 flying laps of the McLaren, and to be fair, we'll probably give 2 to the Ferrari as well. So this car feels really nicely balanced and really planted. The front end inspires a lot of confidence, as do the brakes. I mean, with these Trofeo tires on, even with ABS off, you can pretty much just, put your foot absolutely flat, and just slowly let off as the speed bleeds off. But it's quite easy to not lock your wheels in this car. My only criticism really about this car is that the back end is maybe a little bit too well behaved. I kind of like a car to play a little bit on exit, and you can see it does in some of the really slow stuff, and that was an 18.4, so again, not too good, but we will take another stab at it and see if we can improve a bit more. I kind of like a car to have a playful rear end. Now the P1's rear end does liven up when you put on the road car tires, the street tires, but it's never quite as lively as I think it could be, which is a good thing for lap times, don't get me wrong. A well-behaved rear end has its place, but sometimes you kind of want a back end to play with you a little bit more. And look at that, 7 tenths, nearly 7.5 tenths up in the first sector alone. So let's really try and get the hammer down and see what this car can do. But it's a really easy car to drive, I must say, and you can make it even easier. Got on the power a little bit earlier there and ran wide, and you can make it even easier with ABS and traction control if you so desire. So just get the car through here, run over the curbs a little bit, point the nose at the apex and just pin the throttle, and it just a little bit of a lock up there. So yeah, what more is there to say? I don't know. I mean, I really have enjoyed driving this car, and I'm sure even with this lap, which will hopefully now be more than, there we go, 1.1 seconds up, so this is going to be a much better lap. And even with this lap, I'm sure I'm still well off the pace of some of the top guys. I make no claims to be a awesome sim racer, or the ultimate authority on Assetto Corsa. I've only actually put, since this game went into early access, I've only actually put about 100 hours into it, whereas there's guys out there with thousands of hours. It's just, for me, it's not the kind of game I feel like playing all the time. So let's get on the loud pedal, push it towards the start-finish straight, and a 17.0. Much better, much better. Now in my practice laps, I did manage a 16.5, and that was while using the GRS override. So there we go. Maybe using that, overriding it is worth, close to half a second or somewhere there. So yeah, 16.5, best that I've done in this car, 17.037 with live commentary. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am now going to go and park my McLaren P1 in my garage, and I'm going to fetch the keys for my LaFerrari. And how much do you wish that you could one day say that phrase for realsies? Anyways, let me go and get the Ferrari, and I'll see you guys back on track. Alright, and welcome to the LaFerrari. And isn't this thing just such a gorgeous car to look at? I think out of the two, the P1 and this, in terms of styling alone, I don't know, I think this is the one that I would have. But before we get started, quick quickly go over the settings again, just so I can show you that everything is absolutely the same. Gears we can't change. Tires, again, we are on the Hypercar Trofeo, 25 psi pressure, which is the same as we ran with the McLaren, 30 liters for fuel, and everything else is unchanged. So let's get going. And doesn't this thing sound good? This car sounds so amazing, at least while the engine is revving up. One of my gripes with this LaFerrari that we have in game is just listen to it here as we break down for the hairpin. Just listen to the engine noise as we go down. Doesn't that just sound flat and horrible? I think it does. And if you watch videos of this car, it just doesn't sound like that. It's the one thing I don't think the developers have quite captured, is the sound of this engine when you're blipping down. So we were a little bit too aggressive over the curbs there. But it doesn't really matter. This is our outlap. We're just trying to get some heat into the tires, so lap warning and penalty doesn't really matter. But one of the things that I love about this car is how playful the back end is. You know, you can really pull off these nice little slides in this car. Even with the Trofeo tires on, it still is more than happy to slide all around, which makes this a really fun car to drive in on corner exit, compared to the McLaren, which is a little bit more grown up in some ways, a little bit more sensible. However, what I do not like, and I don't think we got a slight wheel lockup on the front wheels there, didn't want to turn it. However, what I do not like about this car, at least the in-game version, is the steering. Now, Ferraris in real life, we're kind of over the curves a bit there, Ferraris in real life do have very light, very quick steering. I have been fortunate enough to drive a few myself. I think I've driven a 360, an FF, and a 458 Spider, and they do have very light, very quick steering, which does sometimes mean that you don't get the best sort of feel through the wheel about how much grip you actually have. And this is a problem in this car. I never know how much I can actually trust the front end. On top of that, and this is something that I don't know, we've locked the wheels. Oh, and this is going to put us at a bit of a disadvantage for our start of our flying lap. The drive out of the chicane won't be as good as it could be. But something that I wouldn't be surprised if maybe is a little bit inaccurate in this car is, while not only does the steering not give you that much confidence in terms of feel through your wheel, if you are lucky enough to have a force feedback wheel like I do, but on top of that, the front end just doesn't feel like it has sufficient grip. You do have to be a little bit, I think this car does respond to sort of smooth inputs more than violent, inputs to the wheel, so you do have to try and be smooth enough, but even then, this car just constantly feels like it's in a state of, like understeer. And here we go some more, but that was kind of my fault, we didn't brake enough. So you're constantly getting this feeling that the front end just wants to wash wide and just pull away from the apex, which is something you don't get in the McLaren. The McLaren's front end, as long as you don't carry in too much speed, just feels like it's going to go exactly where you want it to go, whereas this one, it just does not feel hooked up properly. On top of that, the brakes on the McLaren actually feel a bit better. They not only do they feel like they slow the car down more, but it's almost, again, it's almost like the McLaren's got more grip and more downforce, because it's a lot easier in the LaFerrari to lock your wheels, as you've seen me do. And when I haven't locked my wheels now, I kind of haven't quite managed to slow the car down enough. I think you got to brake a little bit earlier in this car than you would in the McLaren. On top of that, I think the McLaren in this game also feels like it has more downforce. So you can sort of attack the faster bends with a bit more confidence than you can in the LaFerrari. But anyways, that is not to say it's not still a fun car to drive. Just braking down for this chicane here, and we managed to get it slowed down nicely this time. No lockups, no fuss, and let's get back on the power. And a 219.9, basically a 220, not good at all. So down for this hairpin, and let's get back on the power, and a little bit of play from the back end. So that was our first hot lap, a 19.9. So let's go for a second hot lap and see if we can do a bit better. Don't attack that curb too much because it unsettles the car a little bit. And we got through a rouge decently well, I think. Now the McLaren topped out at about 292 down the straight before we had to brake. The Ferrari is actually significantly faster. What was that, like nearly 310 or so? But we are actually slower in the first sector, but I think the last lap we did miss our braking point a bit, so that might go a little bit towards explaining that. But this car really does feel to me like you need a lot of I wasn't quite concentrating enough there. You need to put a lot more practice into this car to get the best out of it, whereas the McLaren, that one, you can kind of just get in it and go fast and do decently well. Whereas the LaFerrari, especially how to hook up the front end through the corners, you need to spend more time with it. Does that make it a better car? Does that make it a worse car? No, it doesn't. It just makes it its own car. And some people might prefer the McLaren. They might prefer an easier time of get in and go. Some people might prefer the LaFerrari because some people like a more of a challenge, and the more challenging a car is to get the best out of it, the greater their reward. So there we go, 850 milliseconds up on this lap. So it's still not going to be fantastically fast, I don't think. I'm letting my red team down, boys. I'm letting them down. Try and carry a bit more speed through there. I think we got our turn-in point much better that time. And hard on the brakes and start backing off, and we've locked the wheels, and we're just going to run wide, and we've fluffed that lap. So you can see there, I mean, I never had that problem with the McLaren with like locking the wheels there. But across the line, and we were 9/10 up. Still a pathetic 219.0. And that really is not good at all. And even in my my practice laps, the best I managed with this car was actually a 2:18. So doing this live commentary, I'm actually a second off. It's funny how much doing live commentary actually affects your ability to get the best out of a car. But one thing I did notice, there we go, we're 4/10 up. 5/10 up, yeah, basically. One thing I did notice though was when I selected this car, according to Assetto Corsa, my best lap around Spa in a LaFerrari is a 2:15 point something. Now, I don't know if these, there's been changes to the, there have been numerous changes to the game engine and to the grip levels and that from tires. So I don't know if I myself could get a 2:15 out of this car again, but obviously, you can go a lot faster. And in fact, if you go and look, there's a wonderful app for this game called RSR Live Timing, which is like a database that everyone who uses the app, their lap times go into it. The fastest lap time recorded on there around Spa in the LaFerrari is a 2:12 point something or other. Now again, I don't know exactly when that was recorded. That could have been back from when I did my 2:15. That might not be possible anymore with the current level of grip that the tires are providing. But yeah, so this car is no doubt a hell of a lot faster than I am capable of doing in it. I just prefer a car that's got a more hooked up front end. If I could make some kind of weird hybrid hypercar, I think I would have the front end of the McLaren, the back end of this car, and that would be an awesome driving experience. So this lap, we weren't really doing trying to go for it, just sort of wrapping up final thoughts with some gameplay in the background so you didn't just stare at menus, and we managed to go a little bit faster anyways. So yeah, there's things I just don't quite like about this car. I'm sure with a lot more time in it, you know, you would start to get a better feeling of the front end. But in some ways it's more fun because of its more lively rear end, but the McLaren, I think, just clicks better with my driving style. That's not to say it'll be the same for you. Some people might prefer this one and get better times out of this. I have I'm making no claims that this is the ultimate performance that these two cars can do. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little look at these two cars, and hopefully you got a decent enough idea of where, you know, how they are similar, how they're different, and which might be good for you, because, you know, in some ways I still prefer the LaFerrari because you can do that, and it's still, you know, going sideways is always fun. But I think that about sums it up for this video, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for stopping by. If you have any comments or suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. But yeah, that's it for today. Thank you very much for stopping by. This is Predator 458 signing off, and I'll see you guys next time.